Well, hello there, little masters, and welcome once again to the Prancing Pony Podcast, where we were not the first to put the good stuff in the caves beside the River Narog.
My Gavanin, my friends. I'm Sean Marchese, and I'm joined once again by the Finrod to my Turgon, Alan Sisto.
Who this time did not forget the good stuff like he did last time. But anyway, I digress. And there we go. We've got the digressors already. I can't help noticing, though, that you've given us both Noldor names, but you're using a Sindarin greeting.
Well, that's because after today, it's all I'm going to be allowed to speak publicly. So,
well, that's a spoiler. Folks, if you've woken up from your long nap after our thrilling walkthrough of the map of Beleriand last episode, what, was that sarcastic?
It was thrilling. I thought it was thrilling.
Well, you're in for a treat tonight because we have a lot of story tonight and a lot of drama.
That is true. We have a lot of major plot points tonight, and I think I have to say some of the best character dialogue in all of the Silmarillion. So I'm really looking forward to it.
And I know we want to get into it as quickly as possible. But, Sean, does old Barliman have anything in his bag for us tonight?
You know, I'm sorry to say he doesn't, Alan.
Useless. That useless lump of... Just kidding.
I know.
Thanks,
Well, one thing pushes out another, they say. I'll always
Maybe
be quick
Bob
to
and
defend
Nom
Barliman on
it.
that. No, the truth is we've actually gotten a lot of great questions about the later Silmarillion, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings. We've actually even got a question in the mailbag about Tales from the Perilous Realm.
Oh, that's going to take a while.
Probably will, yeah.
What do we figure?
Because if you haven't... But in case folks haven't noticed, we do try to link the question to the discussion we're having that day, sort of answer it in context, if you will. And we just don't have any questions about this part of the book, so I don't really have anything for us today.
Well, I guess I'll have to be thankful for the silence. But, you know, it is Thanksgiving coming up here, at least in the U.S., so maybe we should just take a couple seconds and talk about what Tolkien stuff we're thankful for.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, I think I do.
Well, I mean, I guess if we're talking about Tolkien stuff specifically, I guess I'd have to start with this podcast. I mean, it's been, about 9 months now we've been doing this? Wow, it's just been an amazing ride. I mean, getting to know people from all over the world. You know, we've had the opportunity to talk to so many great minds, fans and scholars who are also fans, and just some of the conversations we've had with people has been just incredible to me. I'm thankful for that. Yeah. I guess I'm thankful for my family.
Of course.
My wife, who's very patient, and my kids, who are very good with bedtime and allow me to do this podcast.
Very kind of them.
Yes, very. And I've also been thankful for the chance to get to know you better through these discussions and some of the ideas that we've kind of hashed out together. It's been pretty cool.
It really has been quite a process. I was going to say I'm thankful for the podcast as well, so thanks for stealing my idea. But
you got it.
No, I really have been. It's been, we started talking about it back in January, and here it is November, and we're still on the air, but it's not like anybody can kick us off the air. But there are more than 3 people listening.
We're still in the cloud.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a good thing. I'm thankful for, well, goodness, I think the first thing I think of when I'm reading the Silmarillion is I'm thankful that Christopher Tolkien did so much to put together his father's work and release so much material posthumously. He didn't have to. Yeah. He, financially certainly didn't have to. I'm sure that the book sales alone would have made a comfortable living. But he's
surely a labor of love, I think, for him.
Really.
And it's given us just so much richness.
So much. I mean, when you think about not only the Silmarillion, but the Children of Húrin and the history of Middle Earth, the vast work that is. And a little new thing that we're going to talk about here in a bit. Before I get to the last thing, let me do the first thing, which is my family as well. My wife, who's been extraordinarily patient in letting me do these things. We recorded a time that is shortly after bedtime, so if the kids don't act exactly the way we want them to, then I often have to say, okay, have fun putting them to sleep. Bye. So, she absolutely rocks and has been a big supporter of this from the beginning. And my kids my son thinks you're awesome. I don't know why he doesn't like me as much, but he always asks about Sean.
Cool. Really? Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. He wants to know about Sean. He'll listen to us in the car and he'll say, "That's Sean, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah." But he doesn't say, "That's you." It is. It's pretty cool. But
That's really cool. Oh,
Yeah.
well, that's awesome. Unfortunately, when I try to play it in the car, my kids just ask me to put on their songs instead.
well, yeah, I get about 90 seconds before it's like, Daddy, can you put on, whatever it might be. Though, to his credit, it's often Misty Mountains Cold or Blunt the Knives.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to try some of those.
Yeah.
I don't have those. I don't have those Hobbit soundtracks, I have to say.
Well, maybe it's because it's the best thing that came out of the movies, but
Fair enough. Yeah.
But yeah, the last thing that I want to mention, of course, is something you touched on, and that is I'm really thankful for our listeners. We've gotten
Oh, yeah.
such a broad base. I had no idea that we'd get people from all over the world. But what a cool thing that is, that we get to hear from these folks from, all over Europe. And then, we've got folks in, I think, Indonesia and off the coast of Africa and, folks up in Canada.
Absolutely astounding.
It really is. It's amazing.
The places where our listeners come from. And I'm truly grateful for that.
Yeah.
I think we actually, it sounds like probably a good segue into something we wanted to talk about in this episode, which is a little way of saying thanks to our listeners, which is our New Year giveaway. Mm-hmm. Do you want to do the honors on that, Alan?
I do. Thanks. Folks, if you follow us on Facebook or Twitter, you've already seen the announcements. But if you don't, well, now you know you should. But don't worry, there's still some time to participate. On January 3rd, we will be releasing a special episode in honor of Professor Tolkien's 125th birthday.
25th, don't you mean?
25th,
yeah.
I can't say that, Sean.
11-1?
11-1 is easy. 25th has more F's than Fenway's family tree. But
that's
anyway,
a lot of F's.
That's a lot of F's. That's a lot of, I'm just going to leave that there. On that episode, we're going to be drawing the names of 2 lucky winners who will receive a copy of either The Art of the Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit First Edition Facsimile.
And those are both really cool volumes.
Oh, yeah.
So let's kind of run those down. So The Art of the Lord of the Rings is a collection of Tolkien's own art for the Lord of the Rings books. Of course, he was an artist as well as a writer and a linguist and all the other things we love him for. And it's just it's right, truly. And it's just really some stunning stuff. And The Hobbit First Edition Facsimile is something that's just come out recently, which is exactly that. It is a facsimile of the first hardcover edition that was published by Allen and Unwin in 1937, which is actually before.
80 years ago.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It will be 80 years next year.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and this, what's really significant about this is that this first edition has the original story before Tolkien made changes to fit with Lord of the Rings better.
So the Golem chapter in particular is radically different.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
These are great works. The Art of the Lord of the Rings is a beautifully curated work. It was put together by the noted Tolkien scholars Hammond and Skull, whose work Sean and I often reference. Mm-hmm. And like Sean said, that facsimile first edition is a great way to read it, to read The Hobbit as it was when it was first released. So here's how it's going to work. We're going to do 2 drawings, one for each book. For one of them, we'll be drawing a name at random from everybody who submitted a question to Barliman's Bag since the beginning of the podcast. So if you haven't yet done that, you still have time to do so. And please, it doesn't matter if you submitted 7 questions or 1. You're only going to have your name in once.
One entry, yeah. But that's a perfect chance. Please get your questions in now.
Absolutely.
And maybe we'll get some good questions about this part of the Silmarillion. Mm-hmm. So either, especially if you've got questions about things we've already discussed or some of the upcoming chapters for those who have read ahead, all the better.
Yeah.
But then this other drawing that we're doing for the other book is the one that I'm really looking forward to.
Well, and with good reason. As we've already said, January 3rd, 2017 is J.R.R. Tolkien's 125th birthday.
25th. I'm not letting that go. I'm sorry.
Apparently not. Anyway, in honor of his 25th.
You did it. I got you to say it.
I actually said it properly?
You said 25th. You did
Good.
it.
I'm his 11st plus 14. In honor of his 125th birthday, we're asking listeners to submit their thoughts on what Tolkien's work means to them. Just a little celebration of the professor.
Right. So in keeping with the theme of celebrating his 25th birthday, we're going to ask you to keep your thoughts to 125 words or less, or 25 words or less.
Oh, come on now.
You can either submit them to us in writing to the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com, or if you fancy the idea of hearing your own voice on our podcast, send us an audio file. I think Alan's figured out a way to receive those, and I think he can give the technical specifications on that.
Yeah, and we're going to keep it simple. We're not going to have time to edit or convert your files, so just send them to us already in an MP3 format, preferably 96 kilobits a second or higher, because that's the quality that's really pretty average quality, but that's the quality we compress it down to for the podcast. And make sure your file is no more than 45 seconds in length. That's about how long it takes to read a 125-word script. Be sure to include your name and where you're from at the beginning. So if it were me, I would say Alan S., Orange County, California. Wah, 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 wah. And then send it to us as an attachment at theprancingponypodcast@gmail.com. And we'll try to play it during the episode. I say we will play it, but of course we have to reserve the right to limit the quantity if we get too many submissions.
Just in case we get just a ton of submissions.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that's going to happen, but I want to make sure that, you're not offended if we don't play yours. But even the ones we don't play will still be eligible for the drawing.
Right.
So as we've said before, we do record these episodes in advance. We both have jobs and families, for which we are thankful. So we do need to have your submissions in by November 27th at 11:59 Pacific Daylight Time. That's November 27th at, just before midnight, the stroke of midnight here in California. Now, you're going to have to look that up on the internet to find out what time that is for you. I believe we are GMT -8 here, so maybe that'll help you with your calculations.
That sounds about right.
But so that's the cutoff for both drawings. Questions for Barliman's Bag. Everybody who's ever written a question prior to that, we'll put those names in a bag for the Art of the Lord of the Rings. And then anybody who submits that little 125-word or less celebration of Professor Tolkien, we'll put you in the drawing for the facsimile first edition of The Hobbit. So it's coming up quickly, but you do still have a week.
Yes, but just a week left, except for those who have already seen this on our social media. But just a little bit of time left. So please do send us your thoughts about Tolkien. Send us your questions for Barliman's Bag, and we really can't wait to hear what we get from you. And two of you, I guess, one from each group, will be a lucky winner. So. But yeah, as Alan said already, again, if this is the first you're hearing of it, come follow us on social media, and you too can hear about the next special event like this.
Absolutely. Well, where can they find us on social media, Sean?
I'm glad you asked. We're on Facebook at The Prancing Pony Podcast.
That wasn't stilted at all, was it? That wasn't. Did that sound fake?
We didn't force that at all.
No.
We're on Facebook at The Prancing Pony Podcast, and on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod.
Awesome. Well, is there anything else before we get started on tonight's episode?
I do have just another little quick thing. I was just listening to our episode 23, and that's the one where you said something, just a little offhand comment about hoping that the next story Christopher Tolkien would complete and publish as a standalone novel, kind of the way he did with Children of Húrin. You said, man, it would be great if he did Tuor and Gondolin like that.
And it would. I agree.
And it absolutely would. But I just wanted to point out, it's going to be old news by the time this releases.
That's true.
As of recording, it was actually just announced a few days ago that he's doing that with The Tale of Beren and Luthien. And I can't wait for that. That's going to be so awesome.
You're not kidding. And that was the first thing I thought about when I heard about this new book was that comment that we'd had. I'll admit I'll gladly take this instead for now.
Oh yeah, yeah, and hey, maybe it's I'm just going to hold out hope that maybe Tuor and Gondolin is will still come. I mean, those were the three stories that were supposed to anchor the Legendarium, weren't they?
Those were the core, no doubt.
If he's going to do it with three, that would be the three to do it with. And I'm really looking forward to it. I would love for us to get a chance to talk about it on the podcast. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know how much.
Children of Húrin length, maybe. I mean, it's a
maybe so,
short novel, but definitely meatier than the version in the Silmarillion, I'm sure.
Yeah, that would probably be about right. And we'll just have to kind of see what comes out and see how we want to tackle that. But I definitely think it would be worth giving some time to it on the show, and maybe looking at a comparison of different versions of the story. I don't know.
Sure, maybe.
We'll see. So, and I think that one's actually coming out in the U.S. and the U.K.
Sometime in the summer, isn't it? May or June, I think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's coming out at the same time in the U.S. and the U.K., which is rare.
That is rare. You're right. And it's coming out just before we will finish this volume on the podcast, which I think we'll finish sometime in June or July. I want to say the end of June for our recordings, and sometime probably in July for release dates. So by then, everybody will have had a chance to read it. So maybe we'll do an episode or two on that before we move on to The Hobbit.
That would be cool.
Well, before we get to that, since that's a few months off, we have a lot more Silmarillion to get through, and I want to get started tonight. But first, isn't it time for another Tolkien fun fact?
Yes, it is, Alan. Thank you very much.
Awesome.
So this is a fun fact tonight that a lot of people have heard before. It's actually been relayed in a couple of the different sources. It's mentioned in Carpenter's book. I think John Garth mentions it in Tolkien and the Great War. Dr. Sfemian Higgins mentioned it in Secret Vice. But I thought of it again today. So here we go. Now, a lot of people know that Tolkien was really fond of using Germanic root words in his writing. And what I mean by that is, a lot of the vocabulary that he uses, they're words that maybe aren't all that common anymore, but he goes back to the early roots of Old English and finds, these older words from Germanic roots as opposed to Latin-derived words or French-derived words, which there are many of in English, and that came later. It's not in all cases by any means. I mean, I think especially with like the Númenóreans and the Gondorians, I think Tolkien uses a lot of some of the Latin root words. I always think of what's Faramir's line? A chance for Faramir, captain of Gondor, to show his quality.
Yes.
That's quality's a good Latin word.
Yes, it is.
But then, like, you look at the Rohirrim on the other hand, and it's almost all Germanic root words. And not to go off on a tangent, but I think we were talking about this recently, that whole whole thing from the movie about Bernard Hill saying no parent should have to bury their child, which don't get me started. But
you're right. No,
anyway,
it was a powerful moment in the film, but
it's a beautiful moment. Yeah,
and parent isn't a Germanic word. It's
and Bernard Hill nails that performance, and he nails that scene.
Makes me cry every time.
Yeah, it does. But man, every time I hear him say parent, I just cringe.
Yeah. Why couldn't he have just said no father, and that would have been
no father or
fine.
something? Yeah, exactly.
Because that's a Germanic word.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, we digress. We digress. That's what we do.
We should start. You know what? After our podcast is done, Sean, we should start a band. We'll call it the Digressors.
The Digressors. Yeah.
Either, and I don't know, whichever one of us wants Alan and the Digressors or Sean and the Digressors. Either way, it works.
Yeah. We'll think about that. We'll draw straws for that one. Anyway, this is something that Tolkien does. It's something a lot of people know of. But interestingly enough, this preference for this Germanic vocabulary actually started really early for Tolkien, which probably shouldn't surprise us.
Well, no, everything with him started when he was a kid when it comes to languages.
Right.
The trains and the fascination of Welsh,
and the Great Green Dragon.
The Great Green, not the Green Great Dragon. Oh,
right.
Amazing stuff.
Right. But anyway, when he was 18, so this would have been in 1910, he was at King Edward's School in Birmingham, and he was a member of the debating society at that school. And he was giving a speech taking a position against the Norman conquest, of all things.
A little late for that, don't you think?
about 1,000 years too late, yeah. Which, for those who aren't as familiar, the Norman conquest was, the year 1066?
Yeah.
And that was really the point at which Latin and French vocabulary started entering the English language. And according to the minutes, there's actually the minutes of that event are preserved. And in the minutes, they refer to Tolkien arguing for a return to something of Saxon purity of diction. So he was arguing for this kind of return to
truly pure English,
pure English language. But words like purity and diction come from Latin. So he didn't say Saxon purity of diction. He reached deep for some Anglo-Saxon words, and he came up with right English goodliness of speechcraft.
Oh, I love it. Right
Isn't it
English
great?
Goodliness of speechcraft.
Oh, it's so strong. It's just so Anglo-Saxon.
It's bold. It's not subtle. It is. Yes.
Yeah. And speechcraft is just such a great word.
I love it.
But
it describes it beautifully.
It does. So anyway, folks, next time you find yourself complaining about the way teenagers talk these days, or if you're a parent or a teacher and you find yourself having to correct a youngster's poor diction, why not take a cue from Tolkien and tell them to watch their goodliness of speechcraft?
I love it.
I'm
going to try that on my 4-year-old.
Watch your goodliness of speechcraft, young man.
Watch your phraseology, boy. Oh, man.
Hey,
Good
no
stuff.
phraseology, man. That's Greek.
I know it is. I know. But at least it's not Latin or French.
This is true. It's true. Greek is a very strong language, too.
Well, now, why don't we, after all that, jump into today's discussion? We're going to go to the text, and we're going to start right there at chapter 14 of the Noldor in Beleriand. And I think we start with you reading, well, not the full paragraph, but kind of starting halfway down, right?
Yep. I'll start from, Then Turgon knew.
Okay.
Then Turgon knew that he had found the place of his desire, and he resolved to build there a fair city, a memorial of Tirion upon Tuna. But he returned to Nevrast and remained there in peace, though he pondered ever in his thought how he should accomplish his design. Now after the Dagor Aglareb, the unquiet that Ulmo said in his heart returned to him, and he summoned many of the hardiest and most skilled of his people, and led them secretly to the hidden vale. And there they began the building of the city that Turgon had devised. And they set a watch all about it, that none might come upon their work from without. And the power of Ulmo that ran in Sirion protected them. But Turgon dwelt still for the most part in Nevrast, until it came to pass that at last the city was full wrought, after 52 years of secret toil.
My goodness.
It is said that Turgon appointed its name to be Ondolinde in the speech of the elves of Valinor, the rock of the music of water, for there were fountains upon the hill. But in the Sindarin tongue the name was changed, and it became Gondolin, the hidden rock.
Wow. Beautiful.
So beautiful.
I love how that rock of the music of water.
Isn't that cool?
That is beautiful.
And
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I know we're going to talk a little bit about the names of it, but
we are.
Yeah, it's just such a lovely name. I even like Gondolin. Gondolin has kind of a musical sound to it. Yeah. But here it is, the first appearance of Gondolin. This is just
amazing.
Really big. Not the first appearance on the podcast. We've talked about it a few times.
But it's
so
the first
important.
True appearance of it in the books. Yeah. 52 years. 52 years.
That's a long
project. It's like
project.
you had the California highway workers working on the on the city.
I'm not sure the California highway workers could build a city in 52 years.
No, they can't build a highway in 15.
Maybe a street. They might have built one street.
They're taking breaks from like 3 to 4, taking lunch from 11 to 2.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, 52 years. So there were probably some cost overruns. I'm thinking some conflicts with the unions, maybe some stop orders. Wow, what a project!
You have a knowledge of city development projects that I never suspected. You're truly a polymath.
I know exactly. I know a little of everything, but only enough to make me dangerous. Mm-hmm. I love this though, that they set a watch all about it. You know, none could come on it from without. The power of Ulmo protected them as well. Mm-hmm. And I love the patience. I think you talked about this when we were discussing this ahead of time. The patience that Turgon shows, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like
hanging out at home.
Oh yeah. He's letting them build it. He's not rushing into this. He's really taking his time. He's planning. He's building, and he is going to be rewarded for it with the most secure stronghold we'll see in Beleriand, which we're going to see on the next page. So that's not much of a spoiler, but I don't know. It just kind of reminds me of the old proverb, the Rome wasn't built in a day.
No.
If it's going to last, you kind of need to put the proper effort into it. And I don't know. I'm kind of a fan of Turgon.
I am too.
He's a planner, and I'm a planner. So
he seems he's deliberate. He doesn't rush into things. He doesn't make hasty decisions. Hasty. He's not very hasty.
Nicely done.
Ondolinde and Gondolin. We're touching on this.
Yeah.
I mean, you can hear the similarity. You can see why it went from Ondolinde to Gondolin.
And yet it's not a literal translation, which is interesting.
Not at all. I mean, there's still the rock in there. That's the Gond.
The Ondo and the Gond.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, of course, Gondor, rock there, right?
Right.
Many
don't forget our favorite name for the dwarves.
Gondherim. So we know that's rock. The music of water. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Fountains on the hill. So did they build... Now, were there fountains on the hill after he built the city, or were there like springs? I'm wondering. Is that... I'm trying to figure out whether he's talking about natural fountains like springs, or if he's talking about...
That's a good question.
Elf-made fountains. I don't know. Just curious.
That's a really good question. I I actually have
We
my
have no
copy of
answer.
Unfinished Tales here, but I'm.
I don't think there's an answer there
might
either.
be-
I looked.
Did you? Okay, of course you did. Oh man. But yeah,
There are other names that get
interesting.
shortened, huh?
Yeah, there are. I mean, this definitely isn't the first time we've seen, a really long and beautiful Quenya name
Yeah.
get shortened. Yeah, one that jumps to my mind is Lothlorien, which the original name of that was Laurelin Doranen, which is Valley of Singing Gold.
Boy, is that musical or what?
Oh,
Laura
that's
Lindorman.
yeah, that's just incredible. And then it gets shortened to Lothlorien, and then we usually just refer to it as Lorien.
Lorien, you're right.
Just going even shorter. I mean, one thing Tolkien would have been aware of, if I know this, I know Tolkien knew it, which is that languages tend to change over time to make them easier to pronounce.
That's true.
And so I think that's kind of what's going on there. Although, we were talking about this earlier, and you kind of had some additional thoughts on that too.
Well, yeah, we've talked about how the Sindar couldn't quite pick up on the Noldoran tongue on Quenya, and perhaps it was just one of those things where they had a hard time getting their heads around it, and instead just replaced it. I mean, yeah, it could just be a simplification. I'm like, I live in California, but a lot of people call it Cali. I don't. Don't ever call it Cali around me. But I'm definitely not far from L.A. I almost never say Los Angeles.
Right.
So I definitely.
Well, I live in a state that can't be bothered to pronounce the last two letters of San Antonio. So,
San Antone.
San Antone. No, that's not really true. I've never actually heard a Texan say that.
No,
but we are kind of known for it.
That's true. That is true. Well, and you say y'all instead of you all.
Oh, yes. Well, that's just proper English. That's just proper Southern American English, man.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, certainly language does. You're right. It does get shortened, easier to say, especially the verbal, the oral, more so than the written.
Well, yeah, you get things like gonna for going to, stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure I say that here even on the podcast, but I shudder to think of that in writing.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
But you're right.
But I mean, I think you're right. I'm sure the Sindar had a lot to do with it. I mean, we do know that there are. I think we're going to get this soon. I think there are more Sindar in Turgon's host than Noldor.
Yeah.
My guess is probably that would have been an accelerating factor. Maybe a language change that would have taken a few generations to happen. Maybe would happen in one or two because the Sindar just can't pronounce the name of the city they live in. So I don't know.
Darn it! I'm just going to call it Gondolin.
That's great. I know. I do. I wish I had some audio of Sindar trying to pronounce some of these Quenya words, but sadly, we'll never have that.
Well, no, and after Thingol has his piece, you won't find any Sindar.
Never going to happen again.
Oh goodness, good stuff. Well, next we get in the same paragraph I'm going to pick up here, and we get Ulmo's warning, and this is some good stuff. Then Turgon prepared to depart from Nevrast and leave his halls in Vinyamar beside the sea. And there Ulmo came to him once again and spoke with him. And he said, Now thou shalt go at last to Gondolin, Turgon, and I will maintain my power in the vale of Sirion, and in all the waters therein, so that none shall mark thy going, nor shall any find there the hidden entrance against thy will. Longest of all the realms of the Eldalier shall Gondolin stand against Melkor. But love not too well the work of thy hands and the devices of thy heart, and remember that the true hope of the Noldor lieth in the west and cometh from the sea. And Ulmo warned Turgon that he also lay under the doom of Mandos, which Ulmo had no power to remove. Thus it may come to pass, he said, that the curse of the Noldor shall find thee too ere the end, and treason awake within thy walls. Then they shall be in peril of fire. But if this peril draweth nigh indeed, then even from Nevrast one shall come to warn thee, and from him, beyond ruin and fire, hope shall be born for elves and men. Leave therefore in this house arms and a sword, that in years to come he may find them, and thus shalt thou know him and not be deceived. And Ulmo declared to Turgon of what kind and stature should be the helm and mail and sword that he left behind.
Man, there's a lot there. We've
There
got
is.
a lot to, we've
There
got a
really is
lot to unpack.
Yeah. I mean, we get the good stuff up front, right? None are going to mark you going. None shall find the entrance against your will, and the longest shall it stand.
So this is going to be a truly secret and therefore truly secure stronghold.
Yeah, and that's where the security is. The security is in its secrecy.
Is in the secrecy, absolutely. Yeah.
And we find that to be key.
Yeah.
And there's just, like you talked about earlier about him being a careful planner. This has a lot to do with that. This is, he knew, because Ulmo gave him the heads up, that he needed to build someplace that would be secure for a long time. So, but the powerful...
Very significant that it's not forever.
Yes, isn't that?
It is.
Longest shall it stand, not forever will it stand. This is not that, this realm of the Eldalier shall stand until the lands are changed.
Yeah,
no,
right.
It's not. It's longest of the realms, but not permanence by any stretch.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
But boy, it's that last line of that paragraph that is the key. And we see this through this comes back so many times, not just in this particular story, but even with other characters. Love not too well the work of thy hands and the devices of thy heart.
Yeah. What a wonderful line. A great bit of advice for anybody in any situation.
Yeah, that's just good stuff.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about it so many times. We've applied it to Feanor. We've applied it to... certainly to Feanor, but others as well, I'm sure. It's funny. I just last week I was reading, I've been reading Verlin Flieger's Splintered Light, kind of on and off. Yeah, I've been reading it kind of on and off, and I just last week actually I got to a part where she called this. She said this was the only commandment in Tolkien's world. This line by Ulmo is the commandment of Tolkien's world. She says, desire to possess is the cardinal temptation in Tolkien's cosmology, and possessiveness the great transgression. The only commandment, stated only once but always implicit, is love not too well the work of thy hands and the devices of thy heart.
Boy, and she's right about it always being implicit. It's always there.
Always implicit. It's going down to Frodo even. It's though the ring is certainly not the work of his hands, it is it's a material object. It's a desire or an intention of his heart to possess it at the end. Unfortunately,
it's that possession. That possessiveness is a real problem. We just talked about this. I don't know if it was last episode or the one before where we were once again beating the dead horse that is Feanor, the dead, burned, ashy horse that is Feanor. When we mentioned from the letter to Waldman, the line that he says, he absolutely blames the fall of the elves. Well, here's the line. The fall of the elves comes about through the possessive attitude of Feanor and his 7 sons to the Silmarils.
That's right. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. It is that possessiveness, not even his pride, which is bad, or his anger, which is notorious. It is the possessive attitude, possessiveness. And that pervades everything in this text. Yeah. So, if there's one line, and Dr. Flieger's right, this is it. That's the command, the only command. But it's a good one, and it's wise, and we would all do well to listen to that.
And it's applicable to, really, it's like I said, it's just good advice for anybody. Yeah. You don't have to be a Catholic or even a Christian or anything to think this is a good advice. It's just, just good stuff, like you said.
Absolutely. It's not relevant to any particular religion, or I guess I should say it's relevant to all or none. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, exactly.
What faith system, if any, you come from. Unbelievably wise stuff. One more thing before we move on. I just want to make sure we understand that when we're talking about the devices of thy heart, we're just talking about the plans. We're just the plans that somebody comes up with. That's all that is. So.
Gotcha. Right. Good clarification.
But I love this line that's next. Remember that the true hope of the Noldor, we always talk about hope, lies in the west and comes from the sea. And you've got something on that, right?
Well, it strikes me that this is this true hope is Estel. We've talked about the difference between Estel, true hope, and Amdir, which is just sort of blind hope, like
random. Right. I hope
I win the lottery
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas true hope is hope that's founded on something, trust in something real.
Yeah.
Often does
There's
have
there's an object
often does
of the
have.
hope.
Yeah, exactly. It often does have sort of a theological connotation, and I would say in this case it does. I mean, he was really talking about the Valar. The true hope lieth in the West.
It's almost more like faith. I mean, it really
exactly.
is. There's a component to that, and I don't, I'm not trying to say that word replaces it. It definitely is hope, but it is. There's an element of faith to it, I think.
Yeah, I think hope, trust, and faith are all faith. It's kind of a combination of all those things. I would have to say.
You're right.
But I think more than anything, I mean, it's this is sort of a warning to remember that that's where your hope is, and again, that's the trust that a certain dead Noldoran prince that I'm going to try and give a break for the rest of this episode. Feanor did not have. He specifically did not believe in the Valar's ability to deal with
Valar. No, had no hope that they would do anything.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of bringing this all together. I mean, I kind of think what I see here is Ulmo saying, you're going to be safe for a long time, but in the end, it's not going to be your walls that are going to save you.
Yeah.
And so it's, again, we talked about it's just a temporary security. It's going to be very long, but it's going to be temporary.
Yeah, and ultimately that permanence is going to have to come from the Valar. Well, still in this passage, we get, we've had the good stuff, and then we've had that little bit of a warning, and then we have a secondary warning here, or a reminder that Turgon is still under the doom of Mandos, because he did continue after being, the prophecy of the North when Mandos spoke, and only Finarfin and a few others turned around.
Right.
So he is still under the doom of Mandos.
And we are reminded that Ulmo had no power to remove that.
That's key. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. That is not, he may be one of the Valar. One of the high ones, too. I can't remember the word for that. The
Aratar.
The Aratar. Thank you. But yeah.
And and he's the one that we know from, from some later episodes that he's, he says that his role is often to kind of do his own thing to make sure that, things are happening when they need to be happening.
His role is kind of to play he kind of plays the rebel here. He goes and helps kind of almost what would appear to be against the will of the Valar. But of course we learn that it's not. It's specifically the role of Iluvatar is, designed for him.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting that despite this being in a role that we can only assume is appointed to him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
By Iluvatar, he still doesn't have the ability to remove the doom.
No,
fascinating.
That's Mandos only, because that's Mandos' job. Mandos' job is to declare dooms.
That is his
judgment.
Appointed role. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing. We talk about doing what you're supposed to do. We talk about it in the context of nature. Be consistent with your nature. Your nature is an elf. Your nature is a man. Here, Ulmo is being consistent with his nature. That is his role, his purpose as designed and, as Iluvatar has given him his purpose, just as Mandos does. So, you stay within those roles and you're good to go. But he tells him, so, because you're under the doom of Mandos, it may come to pass that curse of the Noldor shall find you too, and that treason may awake within your walls.
So there's two. Yeah. So, there's one reference to May. Okay. I thought there might be two. This may is very interesting to me.
Isn't it? Thus it may come to pass.
And we kind of traded some notes on this before recording. And, I don't know. I mean, I'm not totally sure what to make of this. It seems to imply that there's there's some degree of uncertainty here.
Yeah, it does imply that. The implication is, because he's not saying, thus it will come to pass. Thus it may come to pass. Okay.
Right.
So that means there's a possibility. There's the outside chance that it may not come to pass. That the curse of the Noldor will find you too.
Yeah.
And I think that's to point out that really it is possible that this could work for a very long time and the curse of the Noldor will not find you, but it's going to depend on other factors. You're not going to be the sole determination as to whether or not this happens to you. It's going to, if it happens, it's going to happen from outside, and it's going to come inside.
Right.
Because it's the entire curse of the Noldor. And, you know, as we'll find out in a few chapters, you know, that it is something that comes from the outside.
It's going to be factors from outside, and it's going to be a very long chain of events that leads to that
very long
that event. And it's interesting because I think you're right. I think it's not fated to play out this way. I think there's going to be a lot of individuals' free will involved.
It was exactly.
And I think there's going to be a lot of points, I think, along that chain where something could happen differently to keep Gondolin around a bit longer.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. And it is interesting. The use of the word treason is no accident. Not only because of how the end eventually comes, but if we look back to the doom of the Noldor, you know, that treason is something that is specifically mentioned in the prophecy of the North.
In the prophecy, yeah, you're right.
You know, and there's no subtlety here. You know, it's the worst possible thing can happen, and it would be treason within your walls. Mm-hmm. But he tells him there's going to be an out, even if that happens.
Yeah, there's going to be,
and it's a very specific out, isn't it?
It is, yes, right. It's someone specific coming, and from him, beyond ruin and fire, hope shall be born.
Isn't that a beautiful line? From him, beyond ruin and fire, hope shall be born for elves and men. Yeah. That pay attention to that, folks. If you're a first-time reader, that's a very important line right there.
It really, I mean, this is one of the biggest remember this moments in the whole book.
It really is.
I love that Ulmo actually tells him what size armor to leave behind.
I know. Ulmo knew
what
Ulmo
kind
knew
of
the measurements precisely. Well, he's a 44 regular. Oh, actually, no, he's very tall. He's got to be like a 46 tall, 46 extra tall, probably.
Right. Yeah. Ulmo.
And the type of helm, the mail, and the sword.
We both have young children, so you'll appreciate. I just think Ulmo could have done very well selling size prediction services to parents. Like, well, your son's going to be 6 foot 4. Your son's going to be in a 6T by next year, even though he's only 4. You know. I don't even know if 6T is a thing. I don't know.
Think
my
they
wife
use
buys
the T's anymore. Once they go past,
my wife buys all the clothes, man. I think there's a 5T.
Is there a 5T? I don't know.
We really are digressing now.
We are seriously digressing.
Other clothes sizes.
That's pathetic, man.
That's what parents of young children do.
It is. People,
or fathers of young children.
For those of you who don't have young children, just get over it, because that's what parents of young children will talk about.
That's right.
Because it is our reality. But no, you're right. Ulmo's prophecy, you know, not only deals with things like treason and eternal hope for elves and men, it also has to do with clothing sizes.
With measurements, yeah.
Good stuff.
Just as long as it's not 36, 24, 36.
I'm not even going to touch that one. I'm just going to leave that right there.
Oh, man.
Well, Ulmo was single, so I guess that's okay. His wife, he doesn't have a wife to give him a hard time about that.
That's right.
Well, on that wonderful note, I'm going to have you take a paragraph here that I know you specifically asked for.
I did. Thank you very much. Through many long years, none passed inward thereafter, save Hurin and Huor only, and the host of Turgon came never forth again until the year of lamentation, after 350 years and more.
Well, that's not foreboding, is it? The year of lamentation.
The year of lamentation. No, not at all.
Wow. He doesn't even wait to the end of the paragraph to give us the foreboding bit there.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
True. No, it's true. It is. It's going to take some lamentation to get them out of there.
Yes, it will.
But behind the circle of the mountains, the people of Turgon grew and throve, and they put forth their skill in labor unceasing, so that Gondolin upon Amon Gwareth became fair indeed, and fit to compare even with elven Tirion beyond the sea.
Wow. Just wow.
Yeah. High and white were its walls, and smooth its stairs, and tall and strong was the tower of the king. There shining fountains played, and in the courts of Turgon stood images of the trees of old, which Turgon himself wrought with elven craft. And the tree which he made of gold was named Glingal, and the tree whose flowers he made of silver was named Belthil. But fairer than all the wonders of Gondolin was Idril, Turgon's daughter, she that was called Celebrindal, the Silver-foot, whose hair was as the gold of Laurelin before the coming of Melkor. Thus Turgon lived long in bliss, but Nevrast was desolate, and remained empty of living folk until the ruin of Beleriand.
Well, there's your end of paragraph foreboding.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Until the end of the entire continent.
The ruin of Beleriand is coming.
Wow.
Eventually. And Nevrast will never be populated again, and I don't think anybody is going to come through there except for that person who's going to pick up that snazzy suit of armor.
Yeah, that custom fit. Good stuff. Well, first of all, I think we have our answer already. There, shining fountains played. That sounds to me like they were, elf.
They were made
fountains.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So we have that answer. I love this. I didn't even catch this when I was kind of, reading my way through the chapter the first time, but that Turgon made the trees with elven craft.
I know. I love that. I looked for some significance to that. I tried to even tie it back.
Craft.
I know. I even tried to tie it back to on fairy stories where Tolkien mentions elvish craft, but he's talking about just fantasy in general. So I couldn't really come up with anything there.
Yeah, I don't know that there is anything other than just that sort of implication that there's some special powers involved.
I think so. I mean, he's got some tricks up his sleeve. I mean, I don't know what. If he's I'm almost imagining Christmas trees with flashing lights or something.
I hope not.
A toy soldier drumming on a drum or something.
Tinsel all over the tree.
But it is tempting to think that there's something interesting about those trees. I know. I love these trees. There's a little bit more of a description of them in Unfinished Tales, where they're actually talked about as Glingal was gold with topaz flowers, and Belthil was, I think, silver and malachite with pearl flowers.
Ooh, wow.
Which is interesting because here he says the flowers are made of silver on Belthil, so maybe that's something he changed later on. But definitely just beautiful, precious metals and gemstone images of the trees, statues, icons of the trees. Really cool.
Gorgeous stuff.
And I got to do my word nerd thing here.
Of course.
With
you
the
wouldn't
names,
be Sean without the word nerd.
Nope, not at all. And this is in the back of the Silmarillion, so I didn't have to dig too deep for this. But Glingal means hanging flame. And I've never seen that gling part in anything else, but, Gal is a word we get a lot for flame and light, Galadriel, things like that.
Gil-galad, yeah.
Gil-galad, yeah. Belthil means divine radiance. Bel, actually, interestingly, Bel is the Sindarin form of Val, as in Valar. And then the Thil is specifically means white light or shining with white light, as in the name of the moon, Isil or Ithil.
Ithil.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So even in Belthil's name, you've got a little link back to the moon, which is kind of neat.
That is cool.
But I think what's most interesting to me, beyond just the meaning of the words themselves, is the qualities of the sound. They're pretty words. They're lovely words. But
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you're going to say what I'm about to say. Yeah,
they're not. Yeah, they're not Laurelin and Telperion, which those words just roll off the tongue.
Oh,
they're beautiful words.
So musical. Yeah. And I think I just think that this is a little linguistic hint from Tolkien. Just a reminder. These trees are beautiful. They're cool. They're made of metal with gems, and they're shining, and this city is amazing. But these trees are just effigies. They're fallen things. They're they're tainted things. They can't approach the beauty of the real thing.
They're movie props. That's all they are.
Yeah, it's all it is. I mean, it just.
And you too can get your limited edition copy if you order now for only $2,000 per tree.
Actual Glingal and Belthil used in the show.
That's right. They'll get shipped from New Zealand.
Right.
It'll only cost you $800 to get them shipped.
Oh man,
it's real silver.
Insert comment about Peter Jackson making the Fall of Gondolin movie here.
Oh.
Move on.
Please move on. No.
I can see the steam coming out of your ears all the way.
My brain. Quick, pass the bleach. It's interesting. I also find that the trees can't be as beautiful as the original trees because we're told that fairer than these beautiful creations is Idril. Now,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that would have compared to Laurelin and Telperion. I don't think we would have been told that that any particular elf was more beautiful than the trees, because I don't think
That's
such
true.
a thing was possible.
That's true.
I mean, Idril's gorgeous. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
she's
Well,
shouldn't
and
be-
she is described as being like the trees. Her hair was at the
hair
gold of
was-
Laurelin.
yeah.
And I think we get that also with Galadriel, don't we?
Yeah, her hair like caught in a mesh the light of Laurelin, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Yeah. So but I think you're right. It's the person is described in terms of similarity to the tree, as
Right.
opposed to being described as more beautiful than the tree. Because you're right, that could never happen with
The
Laurelin and
original
Telperion.
trees, no.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
but these are still beautiful things, and I highly recommend we always highly recommend the version of Tuorin is Coming to Gondolin in Unfinished Tales.
Beautiful
But
story.
there's a couple of just little sentences tucked in the middle of that talk a little bit more about these trees, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you can find those. Well, we're gonna go back to Doriath here. I'm gonna read first little bit of this paragraph, and then I'm gonna let you take some conversation with the ladies, because you like the ladies. We're gonna let you take care of that.
I do like the ladies.
So, now while the city of Gondolin was building in secret, Finrod Felagund wrought in the deep places of Nargothrond. But Galadriel, his sister, dwelt, as has been told, in Thingol's realm in Doriath. And at times Melian and Galadriel would speak together of Valinor and the bliss of old. But beyond the dark hour of the death of the trees, Galadriel would not go, but ever fell silent. Interesting. And then, of course, Melian, confronts her, basically
Yeah.
says,
Hey,
come on,
There's-
something's up.
you're
talk
hiding
to me.
something from me.
Right,
Let's
exactly.
tell me what's going on. Yeah.
And Galadriel's like, that's the past. I don't want to talk about it, right? So
Yeah.
what happens next?
So then Melian looked in her eyes and said, I believe not that the Noldor came forth as messengers of the Valar, as was said at first, not though they came in the very hour of our need. For they speak never of the Valar, nor have their high lords brought any message to Thingol, whether from Manwë or Ulmo, or even from Olwë the king's brother, and his own folk that went over the sea. For what cause, Galadriel, were the high people of the Noldor driven forth as exiles from Aman? Or what evil lies on the sons of Feanor that they are so haughty and so fell? Do I not strike near the truth? Near, said Galadriel, save that we were not driven forth, but came of our own will, and against that of the Valar. And through great peril and in despite of the Valar, for this purpose we came, to take vengeance upon Morgoth, and regain what he stole. Then Galadriel spoke to Melian of the Silmarils, and of the slaying of King Finwë at Formenos. But still she said no word of the oath, nor of the kinslaying, nor of the burning of the ships at Loscar. But Melian said, Now much you tell me, and yet more I perceive. A darkness you would cast over the long road from Tirion, but I see evil there, which Thingol should learn for his guidance. Maybe, said Galadriel, but not of me.
Wow, just zip it. I mean, just,
I'm not saying anything else without my lawyer present.
yeah, exactly. I'd like to plead the fifth. We have ways of making you talk.
Yeah, right.
Oh, man.
Wow.
So she really wants to let go of the past. Like it really is all behind them.
Like it's really all behind them. I know. This is kind of a recurring theme among the Noldor, isn't it? I mean,
It sure seems that way.
wasn't it in not the last chapter, but the chapter before that, where
Yeah.
Angrod withheld information from Thingol because he thought all griefs were now forgiven. I mean,
Right. Well, it's all in the past. It's water under the bridge.
really? I don't
Water
know.
under the bridge right across from the bay where we killed everybody.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think that there's any malice here, but it just seems very, very short-sighted and naive to think that, oh well, that's all in the past now. It's okay.
Well, and it's
We're-
all
we're-
very self-serving too, I think.
for sure. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a convenient lie to tell themselves, I suppose.
Certainly. I mean, you talk about griefs being forgiven, or I think we talked about the idea of atonement. It may be some of that, but I think there's more shame and embarrassment at what they did. I think.
Yeah, That could be. Yeah.
They know it was wrong. Even the ones that didn't take part in the kinslaying still rebelled against the Valar. I mean, that's what Galadriel says. We did this against the will of the Valar.
Right.
So I think they know there was some error there, and certainly error in proceeding to follow Feanor after the Doom of the North had been pronounced. But,
so maybe it's just more of a, we just don't want to talk about it, don't want to think about it. We want to put it behind us as opposed to really feeling that they've atoned for it. Because I think, you're right. That is something that we talked about a little bit before this, which was, the idea that there seems to be an idea that maybe, we crossed the grinding ice, Fingolfin's host. So, we're okay. We've atoned for our sins by crossing that. But I think you're right. I think there's more embarrassment to it and shame.
Yeah, I think they really want to keep their status. They're viewed here as, and in some ways they really are superior to the Sindar. I mean, they are Calaquendi. Let's not forget that. And they want to keep that status. So I think they're trying to, it's an image thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, actually.
To some extent, yeah. Yeah, I thought it was interesting that Melian noted that for these supposed messengers of the Valar, that they don't talk about the Valar.
If you guys are messengers, how come you don't have any messages?
Right. And oh, by the way, what does his brother say?
Right. Right. I know the brother thing was kind of an incriminating one.
That really is. That's kind of a big one. Of course, they never claimed that they came as emissaries, but they didn't deny it either. Exactly.
They just kind of, as you said, they kind of liked that status that they got out of it, and now this is something that would undermine it.
Yeah, I think
especially knowing how many dead Teleri they left in their wake.
Definitely. Well, let's go ahead and I'll take the next section here. We'll get a little bit more about what Melian has to say. And Melian spoke then no more of these matters with Galadriel, but she told to King Thingol all that she had heard of the Silmarils. This is a great matter, she said, greater indeed than the Noldor themselves understand, for the light of Aman and the fate of Arda lie locked now in these things, the work of Feanor, who is gone. They shall not be recovered, I foretell, by any power of the Eldar, and the world shall be broken in battles that are to come, ere they are wrested from Morgoth. See now, Feanor they have slain, and many another, as I guess. But first of all the deaths they have brought, and yet shall bring, was Finwë, your friend. Morgoth slew him, ere he fled from Aman. Then Thingol was silent, being filled with grief and foreboding. But at length he said, Now at last I understand the coming of the Noldor out of the west, at which I wondered much before. Not to our aid did they come, save by chance. For those that remain in Middle-earth the Valar will leave to their own devices until the uttermost need. For vengeance and redress of their loss the Noldor came. Yet all the more sure shall they be as allies against Morgoth, with whom it is not now to be thought that they shall ever make treaty. But Melian said, Truly for these causes they came, but for others also. Beware of the sons of Feanor. The shadow of the wrath of the Valar lies upon them, and they have done evil, I perceive, both in Aman and to their own kin. A grief but lulled to sleep lies between the princes of the Noldor. And Thingol answered, What is that to me? Of Feanor I have heard but report, which makes him great indeed. Of his sons I hear little to my pleasure, yet they are likely to prove the deadliest foes of our foe. Their swords and their counsels shall have two edges, said Melian, and afterwards they spoke no more of this matter.
Thingol's sleeping on the couch tonight.
Seriously, they spoke no more of this matter. Why would you, if you're Thingol and you're married to a Maya,
why would you not listen to her?
Right. Yeah. Why would you not speak more of this matter?
Yeah, right, exactly. You've got an Ainu living in your house.
She is a creature
sharing
of
your
the
life.
very thought of Ilúvatar.
Right.
And
you aren't going to listen to her.
And you're
counsel.
not going to go back and say, what did you mean by...
Right, exactly. Honey, I was just thinking about what you said yesterday. And
what do you mean the world shall be broken and battles are to come? What?
Yeah.
And what do you mean about the sons of Feanor having done evil? What's this? But no.
Well, this is a recurring theme that now that we're seeing a little bit more of Thingol and Melian together, we're going to see this a lot. Thingol not listening to her.
You are correct. Oh,
it's
man.
kind of one of the great running jokes about the Silmarillion, I think, is that nobody ever listens to Melian. I think we've had
listens to Melian.
Conversations about this before.
Yeah, nobody listens to her. I mean, come on, people.
Yeah.
She is arguably the most powerful entity in all of Middle-earth.
In Middle-earth, yeah.
Right. Because she's the only I knew.
Right.
Well, because I don't know if Tom Bombadil's around, but,
Right. Well, he's doing his own thing anyway.
Yeah, he's in his small little land far on the other side of the Arid Luin.
The Arid Luin, yeah.
So anyway, she is a very powerful entity and very wise. She certainly, and even it's funny. There's a line here. Thingol was filled with grief and foreboding. Well, he was filled with foreboding because his wife just told him that the world's going to be broken in battles that are to come.
Right. But he still doesn't,
But he still's not thinking that maybe we should figure out how to maybe not have those particular battles.
Right.
Maybe we should stay out of those particular battles. I don't know.
None of that.
No.
I wonder.
He gets himself tied up into the fate of the Silmarils pretty quickly, doesn't he?
He does, and I was just going to say, I wonder how much of it had to do with the fact that she told him about the Silmarils first.
Yeah.
I mean, that's never said here, but we know the effect material things can have on people, and we certainly have seen this before.
And in 4 chapters, we'll see it again. We'll see him getting very much swallowed up into the fate of the Silmarils, but that's another podcast.
That's a podcast for another day.
You wanted to talk about the words that he uses in talking about the Noldor coming to their aid, right? What does he say?
I do, because he says, not to our aid did they come, save by chance.
Saved by chance.
Saved by chance. Usually when we talk about chance on this podcast, we discuss how it could be the hand of Iluvatar. Now, granted, this is just a character speaking. This is Thingol's own
rather than
thought,
the narrator.
Rather than, it's not Tolkien's own narration saying that this is what's happening. So, maybe take it with a grain of salt, but it does really make me wonder whether, Thingol is sort of seeing, sure, they did sort of come right at the right moment just by chance. And so it does kind of make me wonder, was it chance or was it really the hand of Iluvatar?
That's an interesting question.
Certainly, not to go so far as to say, again, kind of like the question in the mailbag we talked about a couple of episodes ago, that everything that happened in the fall of the Noldor was, got the Eru Iluvatar stamp of approval.
Speaking of which, that stamp of approval is going to be on the website by now, right?
Yes, it should be up there now.
Yeah.
But so I wouldn't go that far. But again, is there some hand of Iluvatar here in the specific circumstances of when the Noldor arrived when they did? Maybe something that
it's a very interesting question.
Held up Feanor's sons or something. So I don't know.
Yeah, because obviously the departure of Feanor and the rest of the Noldor was against the express will of Iluvatar. He would have preferred them to stay. Yet he knew they were going to leave. Did he manipulate things in such a way so as they arrived at a particular time? I don't know. It's a good question. Thingol seems to be meaning that their purpose in coming may not have been to aid us, but aid us they have. And of course he's right.
True.
Insofar as anyone's purpose can be determined. But we also know that the hand of Iluvatar is behind a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And, the thing is, the words by chance rarely mean that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so even though this is Thingol's dialogue, Tolkien wrote it. He used those words for a reason.
For a very good reason. It all comes back to Spibimi. It all comes back to the free will, the actions that are taken by others, exercising their free will, are used by Iluvatar to accomplish particular goals.
Yeah.
In this case, did he use the arrival of the Noldor to help save the Sindar? It would seem that way. The Noldor could have remained in Hithlum and not, come far enough over to help the rest of Beleriand. I don't know.
Or and maybe even something so simple as the ships. We know that the Feanorians couldn't steer those ships very well. The fact that they ended up in exactly the right place to get them close to Beleriand at the right time, maybe that's Hand of Iluvatar, as opposed to maybe them landing off the coast of Far Harad or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, or they show up in the Falas. They're a little too far south.
Yeah, or someplace too far south. Yeah,
interesting.
It's interesting.
I mean, obviously, we'll never know, but we can. No. I think I would probably come down on the likelihood that by chance was a phrase that he did not use by chance.
I think you're right.
And therefore, it implies the same kind of thing that we get when Gandalf, we talk about narrator versus character. Gandalf even says that when he talks about, that we had a chance meeting, as we say in Middle-earth.
Right, yeah. As we say in Middle-earth, exactly. And we've talked about that before.
Yeah. And it wasn't by chance then either.
Right.
So I'm not sure that the narrator versus character thing is something we should hang our hat on. I would probably say this is definitely an example of the Hand of Iluvatar. So.
I think it's there. I agree with that, and that's why I brought it up, because it just kind of jumped out at me.
But again, it's a difference of, it's not determinism. It's not like Iluvatar caused Feanor to leave, rebel, kill everybody, take the ships, burn them. It was more like he utilized their choices that they made by free will in a way, and it's all because you've got to see that Iluvatar, existing outside of time, all of time is before him at the same time. It's not, time doesn't mean anything to him like it means to you and me. So he's able to, manipulate things, if you will, not people, not changing their free will or removing their free will, but instead acting parallel with their free will, I guess would be a way to put it, to accomplish his overall goal.
Well, and maybe once their free will has set them on a course that doesn't have a decision point for a while, maybe there's a little nudge in a particular direction. Maybe the ships veer closer to Hithlum as opposed to going to to someplace else, going to the Falas.
The currents took them to the north instead of the south.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And those kinds of things seem very likely. So I mean, I think that's what we would call chance here in Middle Earth.
Right.
And I think we do usually see that it's Hand of Iluvatar.
Yeah.
Interesting
stuff.
I also like, this is unrelated to that, but just one of Thingol's other things in terms of, just not listening to Melian like you should. This whole thing about, Feanor's sons are likely to prove the deadliest foes of our foe. It's like, they're jerks, but I'm sure they're going to be great enemies of our enemies.
Boy, he's digging deep. He's
really looking for a silver lining here, I think.
Yeah, he's looking for allies anywhere he can find them. I mean,
right, exactly.
He'd probably be on the same side as the cockroaches in Angband, because at least they'd be, eating some of his food. I mean, they're our allies. They're eating their supplies.
They're eating the orc supplies.
I mean, he's digging however he can. It actually though made me think. The first thing that came to my mind was how the U.S. and the Soviet Union became allies in World War II. Very unlikely allies. We didn't trust the Soviet Union then any more than we did 20 years later. But we knew that they were the enemies of Hitler because he had turned on them and attacked them. So fascinating stuff.
It's that old adage of the enemy of my enemy, and that isn't always. That isn't always the best ally.
No,
maybe they will
not
be
the
for
most
a time.
trustworthy ally. That's the thing. I mean, it might be an ally that you can rely on.
You can work with for a little while.
Yeah, exactly.
But only for a little while.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's so true. And
anyway,
you got to be real careful with who you're allying with. That's true in wars against Morgoth, in wars here in our world, and even in politics. Be careful who you ally with.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, ain't that the truth.
Boy. I really like Melian's final dialogue here, by the way, that their swords and counsel shall have two edges. I love that.
That's a cool line. Yeah.
Isn't that a great line? Just a really strong visual way of kind of pointing out you can't trust these people. You cannot do it.
Yep.
But once again, Thingol speaks no more of this, so he's made his mind up. Yeah, for a Calaquendi, he's just not that bright. I mean, really, dude.
That's a very good point.
Not that bright. I don't know.
Well, you're right.
Sorry.
That's a good one. Oh, man. Well, and, I'm just thinking about, her brightness, her literal brightness.
Literal, right, exactly.
and her figurative brightness as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
I try. But I think you've got the next paragraph here, don't you?
Yeah, so we're moving on to the Sindar in the Falas here, I think.
Yeah.
So it was not long before whispered tales began to pass among the Sindar concerning the deeds of the Noldor ere they came to Beleriand. Certain it is whence they came, and the evil truth was enhanced and poisoned by lies. But the Sindar were yet unwary and trustful of words, and, as may well be thought, Morgoth chose them for the first assault of his malice, for they knew him not. And Círdan, hearing these dark tales, was troubled, for he was wise, and perceived swiftly that, true or false, they were put about at this time through malice, though the malice he deemed was that of the princes of the Noldor, because of the jealousy of their houses. Therefore he sent messengers to Thingol to tell all that he had heard. So here we have Morgoth
again. Yeah,
Morgoth spreading lies again. This time among the Sindar, which just makes me sad because they're a bit innocent, I think.
Mm-hmm. They're naive. They really are.
Yeah,
it says it here specifically. They knew him not.
Right.
They didn't know Morgoth from. Yeah.
Right.
It reminded me at first. I mean, it reminds me of the first half of that great line earlier on, back in when the Noldor started fighting with each other. He that sows lies in the end shall not lack of a harvest, and soon he may rest from toil indeed, while others reap and sow in his stead. This reminds me of that. The second part of that is that he found ears that would heed him and tongues that would enlarge what they'd heard, and his lies passed from friend to friend. Not so much here. I mean, like you said, here they knew him not. So I don't think these were that they were enhancing the story. They were just
just kind of duped, kind of repeating what they heard. Yeah.
Boy, that's just
it's sad.
They were unwary and trustful of words.
Yeah, it's like you said. They didn't understand him. It's a bit like the way Manwë. We always say that he was free from evil and he didn't understand it. I mean, not that the Sindar were free from evil, but they were certainly innocent.
They were innocent. Yeah. They did not know that these historical records were actually a TV show
called Galaxy Quest.
Speak to him as you would a child.
Oh man!
Oh, love that.
I love that movie.
It just made me think of that. The whatever that race, the historical documents.
Yeah. What were they called? I can't remember
their race. I just know that. Yeah. Your Monte Cristo sandwich has proved very popular.
Oh, man.
But they're like that. They're these innocent, you know, they don't understand the difference between pretend and a lie.
Right.
And, I mean, that's an exaggeration, of course. But, the text is pretty clear. They were unwary. They were trustful. They didn't know Morgoth. But I love how Círdan was wise enough to know there's something going on here. Sure, whether these are true or not, there's a reason these stories are being told.
Yeah, and he didn't know exactly what it was. He didn't know exactly who was doing it. He thought it was actually the Noldor.
Right.
Which
it could have been.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
At some point. But, he knew something was up. Yeah. He didn't know what, but he knew something was up, and so he went and talked to Thingol. Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So then the sons of Finarfin are there. Thingol confronts them, and then after Finrod's answer, I'm not going to read this part, but Finrod's answer is very diplomatic, isn't it? What ill have I done you, Lord? What evil deed have the Noldor done in all your realm? Neither against your kingship nor against your people have they done anything wrong.
Yeah.
I got to say, I don't think he's playing dumb here. I think he really does.
Don't.
No, this is kind of like we talked about the whole thing with status and trying to look good. Again, this is Finrod, so I don't want to ascribe evil motives to him, but, he phrases his answer, he parses it so carefully like a politician. You know, he's really making sure he doesn't say anything that can come back. Well, I should say like a smart politician. He's saying things that can't come back to bite him in the butt.
Yeah.
He knows exactly. It's a very narrowly defined defense. And
neither against your kingship nor against any of your people have they thought evil or done. Yeah. That's true. I mean, what have we done in your realm to grieve you? We haven't done since we've been here. We've not done anything wrong.
Since most of your cousins and kindred were killed over there, and since Feanor and his people burned the ships, we haven't done anything here.
Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I love Finrod, and I hate to ascribe any kind of negative motivation to him.
I don't think it's negative motivation. I think he's really truly past those things, just like Galadriel is.
Well, maybe so. I don't know.
It's just he doesn't want to bring it up.
It could be that he's very careful because he truly has convinced himself that it is past.
Well, and there's definitely some diplomacy, because we'll get to it in a little bit, that one of his motivations is he doesn't want to have to bring charges against the other princes of the Noldor. So I think he's really trying to keep that, under wraps, but his brother doesn't feel the same way. I think that's kind of what brings me back to the question of whether he's playing dumb. And I don't know. He's definitely very careful with his response. Right.
I'll just leave it at that. And I kind of feel like, come on, dude, you know what he's mad about. But
you really do. I'm going to go ahead and read then Thingol's response after Finrod's little deal here. I marvel at you, son of Eärwen, said Thingol, that you would come to the board of your kinsmen thus red-handed from the slaying of your mother's kin, and yet say naught in defense, nor yet seek any pardon. Then Finrod was greatly troubled, but he was silent, for he could not defend himself, save by bringing charges against the other princes of the Noldor, and that he was loath to do before Thingol. But in Angrod's heart the memory of the words of Caranthir welled up again in bitterness, and he cried, Lord, I know not what lies you have heard, nor whence, but we came not red-handed. Guiltless we came forth, save maybe of folly, to listen to the words of fell Feanor, and become as if besotted with wine, and as briefly. No evil did we do on our road, but suffered ourselves great wrong, and forgave it. For this we are named tale-bearers to you, and treasonable to the Noldor. Untruly, as you know, for we have of our loyalty been silent before you, and thus earned your anger. But now these charges are no longer to be borne, and the truth you shall know. Then Angrod spoke bitterly against the sons of Feanor, telling of the blood at Alqualande, and the doom of Mandos, and the burning of the ships at Loscar. And he cried, Wherefore should we, that endured the grinding ice, bear the name of kinslayers and traitors? Yet the shadow of Mandos lies on you also, said Melian. But Thingol was long silent ere he spoke. Go now, he said, for my heart is hot within me. Later you may return if you will, for I will not shut my doors forever against you, my kindred, that were ensnared in an evil that you did not aid. With Fingolfin and his people also I will keep friendship, for they have bitterly atoned for such ill as they did, and in our hatred of the power that wrought all this woe, our griefs shall be lost. But hear my words. Never again in my ears shall be heard the tongue of those who slew my kin in Alqualande, nor in all my realm shall it be openly spoken while my power endures. All the Sindar shall hear my command, that they shall neither speak the tongue of the Noldor, nor answer to it. And all such as use it shall be held slayers of kin and betrayers of kin, unrepentant.
Man.
Well, that's a
lot to unpack there too. But
yeah,
boy,
really
you're right about Angrod. I mean, he's not hesitating to point the finger at Feanor's sons.
And I mean, to get on it, didn't he?
And he's not wrong.
No, he's not. And he's got a couple of great lines. I love the as if besotted with wine.
I do love that one too. And I think it was a couple of episodes that I talked about the Noldor waking up the morning after having the hangover. Like, dude, what did we do?
You weren't a lampshade and
right,
on the
exactly.
table? Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's such a powerful image. The intoxicating, just lie that Feanor told them. And there we go, beating up on Feanor again. But
we
yeah,
said we wouldn't, but we did.
I know, I know. But yeah, he really was quick to point the finger, divert the blame, and it kind of works, really. I mean,
well, and he's right. I mean, let's be honest. He's totally right.
It was them.
It was all
absolutely.
them.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's all them who started it. You know,
well,
certainly
right.
some of the others kind of jumped in.
We do know that. That's true.
Yeah. But no, you're right. I mean, it was, you know, they instigate, I guess. Well, they started it. You know,
but
I guess it only gets you so far.
But none of these people jumped in, right?
Well, that's true, because these are the sons of Finarfin.
The sons of Finarfin, so they were not. They were not.
That's true.
Yeah, involved at all in the kinslaying.
That's right. Yeah, we're not talking about, you know, Fingon or anybody who rushed in before he knew what was going on. Yeah.
I'm always going to come back to that van.
Fingon in the van.
Maybe we
pulled it over.
Yeah, we had.
He turned down the Zeppelin and got out.
Turned down the Zeppelin.
Just imagine his little party van with
had some Zeppelin playing on the 8-track.
Yeah, with an airbrush of the two trees on the side of the van.
On one side, on the other side, he's got, like, you know, Karkaroth dripping blood, and you know, all metal, all heavy metal looking.
Totally metal. Oh man. But wow, what else do we have?
We digress.
Yeah.
Well, first we get that Melian reminds him that the shadow of Mandos lies in them also. I love that. That's a subtle little line. It's just kind of stuck in there, but we can't forget that. You know, they still followed after the prophecy of the North. Now, a lot of Finarfin's line, including their father himself, turned around and went back. Mm-hmm. So they have to remember, we are still part of this, and the whole treason thing and betrayal and all of that. That's gonna
second time one of the Ainur has reminded the Noldor of this in this chapter.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Turgon was reminded by Ulmo, and now Melian reminds Finrod and Angrod.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, hey, look, Feanor's gone, and maybe his sons are off, you know, off on the March of Mithros and everything, kind of doing their thing, but you guys are still, under this curse, under this doom.
And I love Thingol's response. It's particularly the part where he tells them to go because of his temper. You know, he knows how angry he is.
Yeah,
and
it's actually it's scarier than if he had actually lost his temper. You know, because it's just right there below the surface, and he knows
it's bubbling. It's
bubbling,
and you know that. You're reminded, this is a king. Let's remember, this is not some constitutional republic in which, you know, they have to be tried before their peers and, you know, get criminal appeals and, you know, all of that. No, this is the king. He could order them to be imprisoned right now, and they would be imprisoned. Doesn't matter whether it's just or not. You know, that might not be a wise idea, but, you know, the point is he could do whatever he wants. He is the king.
Well, and here we see... Yeah, and here we see some of Thingol's strength, don't we? Because, I mean, he has some not-so-great moments later in the book.
Oh, yeah, definitely does.
But here we do see this is a very noble act for him. You know, he knows he's angry, and he could, you know, order something that he might regret later. That would be a good idea.
Off with the heads.
Right, exactly, yeah. So that was a really good catch there.
Yeah, it's just, it's subtle. You'd have to, you know.
Yeah.
But I do like that he says, look, come back later, you know, when things have chilled. I'm not going to be entirely opposed with Fingolfin, though we'll find out later that he does not allow anybody but the sons of Finarfin to come into Doriath. He still maintains an alliance with Fingolfin and his people, but Feanor's line, forget it.
Says nothing about Feanor's line, does he?
Nothing.
Yeah.
And there's a good reason for that. But and remember, you know, he's not going to shut them out. He is related to them. He is their great uncle. And I think it's that reason why he is perfectly willing to accept them at face value when they tell them what happened.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree.
He may be disappointed that they hid this. He may be angry, but he doesn't think that they're
he ultimately
lying.
believes that they didn't aid in the evil, which is true.
Yeah, and he would. He would have to believe that, or they would be in much worse trouble than just leave right now. It would be,
exactly.
I'm going to kill you now.
Right.
He also brings up this idea of atonement. doesn't he? They have bitterly atoned for such ill as they did.
Yeah.
And that atonement must be the crossing of the Helcaraxa.
Yeah, I think so, especially when we're looking at, Fingolfin's people specifically.
Yeah, Fingolfin and Finarfin's people for that matter.
Yeah. So it definitely seems like he does hold this belief to some degree. Okay, yeah, you guys have paid for you guys have paid for your
mistake. It's an interesting concept. It almost seems to fit with, if I want to bring theology into it, with Tolkien's Catholic beliefs in terms of,
sort of a purging.
Like when you go to confession and then they tell you to do certain things.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. I didn't catch that until just now as I was thinking about it, the idea of atonement being a very theological word, or at least a word that carries some theological meaning.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But, boy, the banning of Quenya.
Banning of Quenya. Wow.
This is huge. I'll let you take the next, because now we get what that looks like in reality. I'm going to let you take that next paragraph.
Well, and I'll come back to this last line.
Oh, yeah.
I just love. But anyway, line. So the next paragraph. So, then the sons of Finarfin departed from Menegroth with heavy hearts, perceiving how the words of Mandos would ever be made true, and that none of the Noldor that followed after Feanor could escape from the shadow that lay upon his house. And it came to pass, even as Thingol had spoken, for the Sindar heard his word, and thereafter throughout Beleriand they refused the tongue of the Noldor, and shunned those that spoke it aloud. But the exiles took the Sindarin tongue in all their daily uses, and the high speech of the West was spoken only by the lords of the Noldor among themselves. Yet that speech lived ever as a language of lore, wherever any of that people dwelt. So, with this shunning of the Noldor by the Sindar, you really, for the shunning of those who speak Quenya, you really get this idea that just for speaking Quenya, you can be deemed a slayer of kin, a betrayer of kin, unrepentant.
Yeah.
Wow.
Powerful.
That's incredible. But then, so, I mean, this is, just to be clear, this is really virtually the death of Quenya as a spoken tongue. I mean, it's going to be spoken behind closed doors by the Noldor, kind of like how Latin was during the Middle Ages. It's kind of spoken by an elite behind closed doors, but it's not a living language. It's not changing. It's not changing and adapting to everyday speech. It might change slowly, but it's just sort of becoming sort of frozen in time, kind of like Latin is. And of course, Tolkien referred to Quenya as the Elf Latin. It's sort of dead for purposes of everyday speech. But
wow.
But I guess we see it's not quite dead. It's not quite dead.
He's getting better. I'm feeling better.
I feel fine. Go ahead and speak me. Decline my nouns.
Oh my goodness.
Conjugate my verbs.
Oh, you are taking that way too far. That is good stuff.
Yes,
though.
I am. So yeah, it's me and my linguistic stuff. It's
the word nerdery.
It's the word nerdery. It's kind of interesting.
It is. It's very interesting. But I think there's something else at work here too. In this ban on Quenya. We've talked before about language as culture, and it is, of course. It's how a people identify themselves. Ethnicity and nationality often go hand in hand with language. Thingol seems to be using this moment of crisis, and I don't mean to imply that he's doing it on purpose, but he is, as a result of this at least, this moment of crisis is now establishing the Sindarin culture as the dominant culture in Beleriand. The Noldor come over, and they're kind of the superior culture, right? They come over, they're from Valinor, they're the Calaquendi. Sure, Thingol is saying, hey, remember, I'm the king here. But, you and I both know this is kind of the superior culture, and really over time, you could have seen Quenya or the Noldorin culture as being the primary culture. But instead, with this banning of the Noldorin tongue of Quenya, you're now establishing the Sindarin culture as that primary culture. I'm trying to think of like a modern parallel, but maybe World War II. At the end of World War II, what if the Allies all got together and said, okay, all the evil was done by people who spoke German. So all such as speak German shall be held fascists and Nazis unrepentant, and banned the speaking of the German language. That's how serious this is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a weird analogy, I get it, but what impact would that have had on the German language and culture?
Yeah, I mean, you're willing to basically destroy the
entire identity of a
country,
people.
of a nation, of a people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously with World War II, I mean, they did break up Germany politically.
Well, right.
But I mean, you actually to
try to wipe
out the language. That would be
the
an
identity
attempt
of the people right there.
Yeah, that's the identity, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just another language as culture thing, like we've talked about. And
it's a really good point.
It's just something that feels to me a little draconian.
It's a bit extreme. Yeah. Well, and draconian is a good word for it, because when we think about,
of course it is, Sean. I used it.
You just take my compliment and prove why I shouldn't have given it to you.
I'm terrible that way.
You are. No, I think it was in the Return of the Noldor chapter where we learned that the Noldor actually kind of they were speaking a lot of Sindarin anyway.
Yeah,
they were choosing to speak Sindarin, and we talked about the fact that the Sindar couldn't speak Quenya as well.
Sure, and we speculated as to why. Maybe a little bit of the let's leave it behind us, which of course we see here too with Galadriel and Finrod's words,
and embracing of this culture that we are going to assimilate, or sort of assimilate into.
Yeah, we're here now.
But now Thingol's making it law.
Mm-hmm.
He's
and putting a stigma on people who speak it.
Right.
That's the key right there, because that shunning, that stigma is exactly what pushes Quenya, behind closed doors now.
Right.
It's a heavy sentence, no doubt about it.
It is, and these are the kinds of things that Tolkien, as a philologist, he really placed a lot of importance on this kind of stuff.
Of course.
It's the kind of stuff that maybe a first time reader or somebody who's not really as interested in the linguistic stuff being like, oh, okay, well they don't speak Quenya anymore. But no, this is very significant. I think you're right, and I think it is an attempt to quash the Noldoran culture in a way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really fascinating.
It really is. It's sad.
It makes me want to go back and read the Shibboleth of Feanor again, because that also had to do with we've talked about it a few times on the podcast, but
we touched on that.
That's also about the use of language to stigmatize a group.
It is. You're right. It absolutely is. Well, I'm going to go ahead and read the last paragraph and line, and we'll discuss that and wrap it up. It came to pass that Nargothrond was full wrought, and yet Turgon still dwelt in the halls of Vinumar. And the sons of Finarfin were gathered there to a feast, and Galadriel came from Doriath and dwelt a while in Nargothrond. Now King Finrod Felagund had no wife, and Galadriel asked him why this should be. But foresight came upon Felagund as she spoke, and he said, An oath I too shall swear, and must be free to fulfill it, and go into darkness. Nor shall anything of my realm endure that a son should inherit. But it is said that not until that hour had such cold thoughts ruled him. For indeed, she whom he had loved was a Marié of the Vanyar, and she went not with him into exile.
Boy, that's a downer.
Isn't it? That's so sad. I'll give you a spoiler that makes things happy. In the Grey Annals, which is part of History of Middle-earth, I can't remember now which volume that's in. Oh, I can't remember. I can't
remember either.
It is said.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Yeah, it's said that he dwells now in Valinor with a Marié. So that's nice.
That is nice.
He does end up there eventually, which of course tells you a little bit of what happens to him. But we've kind of acknowledged it himself here. He says, "I have to fulfill an oath and go into darkness." That's
right.
Yeah, that's usually not.
Well, and I think we've talked in earlier episodes about Finrod.
Finrod has an end, and as Theoden said, and what an end, right?
And what an end, yeah. I can't wait for that part.
Oh my goodness!
It is. It's in the War of the Jewels.
Yeah, that's right. War of the Jewels. Thank you for that, Sean. I appreciate you looking that up.
Sure.
Interesting. Galadriel gets all the good conversations, right? I mean, she had that great conversation with Melian, and now she's like making her way all the way down to Nargothrond.
She finds herself in all the important conversations in Doriath. Just like I'm trying to think of a historical, historical person
Somebody
to like.
Always at all the important conversations.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. She asks him why he's not married. I mean, do you not like girls? Do you need me to set you up with somebody? Celeborn has a sister, She has a great personality.
You're right. Exactly. Oh man, yeah, exactly.
No.
Come on, bro. Come on. Just
What's up,
settle
man?
down. Settle down with a nice girl.
Yeah.
Um,
Seriously, no, Celeborn's sister, she really does have a great personality. You'd love her.
I want nieces and nephews.
But boy, is his answer just foreboding. And interesting, he didn't know it until then. Foresight came upon him as she spoke. Thanks a lot, Foresight.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Oh, wow, yeah.
It wasn't like he knew this all along, was just waiting to talk about it.
Just trying to have coffee with my sister and talk a little bit about
and all
the
of a sudden
future.
these words come out of my mouth.
All of a sudden he has this foreboding foresight.
I was going to say, I just haven't had time to find the right girl, or I'm on Match.com. But all of a sudden I just said, an oath I too shall swear. What in the world am I saying? And must be free to fulfill it. What do you mean? What am I saying? Shut up.
Right. Oh man, that's great.
Very, very sad. But
he's like a superhero who doesn't want to. He doesn't want to be tied down. I have to be free to fulfill my oath.
That's right. Oh man, good stuff.
Full of foreboding, though. I mean, his personal foreboding. I will go into darkness.
Right.
So that's foreboding his personal fate, and then nor shall anything of my realm endure that a son should inherit.
Wow, that's heavy.
That's foreboding the fate of Nargothrond. His city is not going to survive.
His whole kingdom. He just built this place.
Yeah.
He just built this city on rock and roll.
Oh, no. Why?
Why? Because I'm cruel that way. Why? I am. Well, he built it under a rock.
That's true. That is true. And a rolling river.
Oh. Well, on that note.
I can't believe we just inserted our second Starship reference into this podcast.
That's a horrible thing to do to people. Horrible. We shall atone for that by walking over the grinding ice.
That's right.
I've got some extra ice in my freezer. I could dump it on the garage floor. And
walking over the grinding ice to probably wrap this episode up.
I think so, yeah. I think really on that note, I think we have to wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. As always, we thank you very much for joining us. And as we often have said lately, especially tonight.
We say it every night now.
I know. That's becoming part of our regular thing.
Hopefully it's still entertaining for everyone.
I'm sure.
And join us again when Ulmo's prophecy from earlier in the chapter actually starts coming true right away.
Wonderful.
Chapter 16 of Meiglin.
Oh, man, that is such a fascinating story. It's full of a lot of dark foreboding. Well, I mean, maybe that's only because I know what happens, but it certainly seems that way.
Oh, definitely. And it's very human. It's such a poignant, sad story. I think it's just, but it's so good because it really is ramping up towards, where this whole story is going. So it is good.
Well, as if things haven't been ramping up already.
Yeah, true.
Well, remember, folks, if you need cheap paperbacks to mark up, you can use the links on our library page at theprancingponypodcast.com. We also have links to audiobooks, music CDs, a bunch of other cool things for your Tolkien collection.
And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe on iTunes or Google Play Music. We need your iTunes reviews, so please leave one if you haven't, and we greatly appreciate your support. We're also on Stitcher and TuneIn, and thanks to those of you who are visiting and commenting on social media. This is The Prancing Pony, as we always say, and you can join the conversation in the common room on Facebook at The Prancing Pony Podcast and on Twitter at Prancing Pony Pod.
Social media is the perfect place to share our podcast as well. We really thank those of you who've been doing that. Retweet us, share us, tell your friends. We really appreciate all the work you're doing to help us grow the number of folks that are getting to listen. One last thing, as always, don't forget to send your questions, comments, or your marital advice to Thingol about listening to his wife to the Prancing Pony Podcast at gmail.com. And
we'll get some good ones on that one.
Yeah, we will. We'll try to get him into our next episode. Well, an hour 40 or so is still far too short a time to spend amongst such admirable listeners. But until next time.
Farewell, friends.